Good morning, Australian, and welcome to your Australian Lads News Morning Sun with Face, where we bring you the latest updates, live, and direct to your screens. I'm your host, First Galaxy Australian 2K10, and today, we're celebrating the spirit of greatness morning as we dive into Tuesday, February 11th, 2025, with all the important stories and news you need to start your day strong.
Good morning to you too, First Galaxy Australian 2K10, and good morning to all our viewers joining us for another Greatness Morning Sunrise. It's a Tuesday to remember, that's for sure. I'm Yanes Wandens 13, and I'll be alongside you as we dive into the big stories of today. News 1. After Table Mountain, the candy-coloured houses of Bo-Kaap have become one of Cape Town's most iconic images, a key stop in any tourist's visit to the South African city and a must-have for Instagram feeds. However, many residents of the historic Muslim district are increasingly fed up with tour buses snarling up traffic, people blocking streets as they pose for photos and the mushrooming of outsider-owned tourism businesses, as the spectre of gentrification looms over the central area. Cape Town is increasingly popular with digital nomads and wealthy Europeans seeking second homes to escape to during Northern Hemisphere winters. The number of tourists visiting the mother city also continues to rise, although it is yet to surpass 2019's pre-pandemic peak. Foreigners arriving at its airport last year in the prime holiday month of December were up 3.7% from 2023 to more than 160,000, most of them tourists. In November, a group of residents protested outside the Bo-Kaap Museum, which is housed in one of the area's oldest homes. They carried signs reading, "No buses in Bo-Kaap" and "Stop exploiting Bo-Kaap." Tourism has become an attraction in Bo-Kaap, but it's a double-edged sword. It brings some money into Bo-Kaap, but very little, said Osman Shabudian, the chair of the Bo-Kaap Civic and Ratepayers Association and one of the protest organizers. Bo-Kaap has a tourist problem. First, it's over-tourism. There's too many of them that come up here. Secondly, it has very narrow streets and it can't accommodate these buses. And, thirdly, there are no places for them to park. Bo-Kaap, meaning above the Cape in Afrikaans, hugs the slopes of Signal Hill, with Cape Town's downtown just below. It is one of the city's oldest residential areas, the first houses having been built in the 1760s. Descendants of Muslim enslaved people brought to the Cape by the Dutch from Indonesia and Malaysia, who became known as Cape Malays, lived alongside European, African, and Asian immigrants. Plans to raise Bo-Kaap, like the nearby District 6 area, during the apartheid era were stopped with the help of I.D. du Plessis, an official who had studied Cape Malay culture, according to the Story of Bo-Kaap podcast. However, its designation as a Cape Malay-only area in 1957 meant other residents were evicted, most to the Cape Flats townships on the edge of the city. Today, there are 7 mosques in an area just 2 kilometers long and 500 m at its widest point, with another 4 mosques just outside it. Many houses are emblazoned with pro-Palestine murals. Among residents' fears is that outsiders moving into the area will lodge successful noise complaints about the calls to prayer, and that new businesses will be awarded alcohol licenses. I know I can't stop gentrification. My job really is to try to preserve the story of Bo-Kaap that underpins our identity and the identity, the national heritage, of this country, said Zaki Harris, a tour guide from Bo-Kaap, who wants authorities to educate guides from outside the area about its history and to provide more opportunities for residents. Locals need to participate in the tourism economy, otherwise they're out, said Harris, who also chairs the Bo-Kaap Tourism Association, in an interview at the Bo-Kaap Deli, a cafe run by a local family. Tour guiding is regulated nationally, said James Vose, the mayoral committee member for economic growth. He added that the city funds Cape Town tourism to provide training and development for its nearly 1,000 members, many of whom reside in Bo-Kaap. Shabudian and the Ratepayers Association are fighting against a proposed 6-story, serviced apartment building they say will tower over the minaret of the nearby Owl Mosque, South Africa's first mosque, built in 1794. FLYT Property Investment, the developer of the site, a disused car park, did not reply to interview requests. It told the Cape Times newspaper it had redesigned the original 9-story proposal after a public participation process. A final planning decision is due by the 21st of April. News 2. Sam Nujoma, the fiery freedom fighter who led Namibia to independence from apartheid South Africa in 1990 and served as its first president for 15 years, has died aged 95. Njoma's death was announced Sunday by current Namibian President Nangolo Mbumba. Mbumba said Njoma died on Saturday night after being hospitalized in the capital, Windhoek. Among those who paid tribute was King Charles, who said he was profoundly saddened to learn of Njoma's death. He said Njoma's contribution to history was immense, adding, "His lifelong commitment to freedom and democracy, overcoming so much adversity on that journey, was truly inspirational." He was revered in his homeland as the charismatic father of the nation who steered his country to democracy and stability after long colonial rule by Germany and a bitter war of independence from South Africa. He was the last of a generation of African leaders who led their countries out of colonial or white minority rule, that included South Africa's Nelson Mandela, Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe, Zambia's Kenneth Kaunda and Mozambique's Samora Machel. Many Namibians credited Njoma's leadership for the process of national healing and reconciliation after the deep divisions caused by the Independence War and South Africa's policies of dividing the country into ethnically based regional governments, with separate education and healthcare for each race. Even his political opponents praised Njoma, who was branded a Marxist and accused of ruthless suppression of dissent while in exile, for establishing a democratic constitution and involving white businessmen and politicians in government after independence. Despite his pragmatism and nation-building at home, Njoma often hit foreign headlines for his fierce anti-Western rhetoric. He claimed AIDS was a human-made biological weapon and also occasionally waged a verbal war on homosexuality, calling gays idiots and branding homosexuality a foreign and corrupt ideology. News 3, Sudan's brutal civil war appears to be approaching a decisive phase as the country's military reported sweeping gains in the symbolic battle for the capital. As a ruinous conflict, often characterized by bloody stalemate, nears its 2-year anniversary, the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, declared a string of rapid advances across the country against the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF. Most notable were developments in the capital, Khartoum, where military forces are closing in on the RSF-held Republican Palace. To the south, separate SAF units made advances alongside the Blue Nile, heading towards a strategic entry point to Khartoum at such speed that it prompted speculation the RSF might withdraw from the city. Analysts say an RSF retreat would constitute a profound recalibration of the conflict. Khartoum has largely been in the control of the RSF since the opening salvos of the war in April 2023. Battlefield updates indicate a shift in momentum, with one army source confirming its troops were close to reaching the center of Khartoum. Babakir Alamin, the head of mission at the Sudanese embassy in London, said he expected the SAF to recapture the entire capital in a matter of days. He said, "There are just pockets of RSF in Khartoum, some in an area we call the Eastern Nile. It will be a matter of days before Khartoum is cleared of RSF." In nearby Omdurman, Sudan's second-largest city, home to about 2.4 million people, clashes have escalated, including an incident last weekend in which the RSF killed at least 54 civilians in an attack on a market. Ellerman said, "Omdurman is almost free of RSF and Khartoum North is free of RSF. The war between the army and RSF has been calamitous for Africa's third-largest country, killing tens of thousands of people, forcing 12 million to leave their homes and pushing regions into famine. In Khartoum alone, at least 3.6 million residents have fled the violence." The battlefield developments come days after the Sudanese military broke an RSF siege of its headquarters in Khartoum, allowing the army chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan to visit for the first time since the war began. That in turn followed the SAF recently recapturing the strategically vital city of Wad Madani, the capital of Sudan's breadbasket, about 110 miles 180 kilometers south of Khartoum. The advances potentially set up the prospect of Darfur, the sprawling region of western Sudan, providing the backdrop for the final battles of the war. Intelligence indicates that many of RSF fighters have already retreated to the western Darfur region, where the paramilitary group hails from. Except for the North Darfur capital, El Fasher, which is under sustained attack and siege by the RSF, the group controls the region. Last week, teams from Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, in Darfur and Khartoum said they were coping with mass influxes of war-wounded patients, confirmation of the escalating violence in both areas. Experts say the dire humanitarian situation in Sudan will be amplified by Donald Trump's intention to close the U.S.'s lead international aid agency, USAID. News 4. Mexico authorities order factory cleanup after Guardian toxic waste investigation. Inquiry uncovered health problems in neighborhood near Monterey area plant that processes U.S. hazardous waste. Supported by Guardian.org. About this content. Veronica Garcia de Leon and Erin McCormick. Saturday the 8th of February 2025 18:00 GMT. Share. Mexican environmental regulators say they have discovered 30,000 tons of improperly stored material with hazardous characteristics in the yard of a Mexican plant that is recycling toxic waste shipped from the U.S. The authorities ordered urgent measures to get the materials into proper storage as part of inspections they are conducting in response to an investigation from the Guardian and Quinto Elemento lab, which raised questions about contamination around the plant, located in the Monterrey metro area. The stories, published on the 14th and the 15th of January, included an analysis of Google Earth imagery that showed what appeared to be thousands of white sacks of the type often used to store bulk quantities of industrial powders piling up on many acres of vacant land inside the plant site. After the articles were published, regulators from the Mexican federal agency in charge of environmental inspection and enforcement, known by its acronym, Profepa, began an investigation and spent 7 days at the Zinc Nacional plant, which recycles hazardous waste from the steel industry to recover zinc. It ordered the shutdown of 15 pieces of equipment that did not have proper authorization. Authorities said they found improperly stored material, in some cases in broken and leaking bags, in the company's yard in the open air and in direct contact with the ground. The agency has given the company 15 days to get the material into proper storage. The first thing is that they have to prevent it from being in contact with natural soil and they must move it to a space that complies with the regulations, said Profepa's head, Mariana Boy, in an interview about the initial findings of the inspection carried out in January. The Guardian and Quinto Elemento Lab, a Mexican investigative journalism unit, collaborated with toxicologist Martín Soto Jiménez, who conducted sampling in neighboring homes and schools and found high levels of lead, cadmium, and arsenic in soil and dust samples taken within 2 kilometers from the plant, including inside some homes and schools. Boy said her agency was trying to determine whether there is contamination from the plant affecting the community. If necessary, the inspectors could return to the plant to carry out sampling, Boy said. We are going to be very thorough in our inspections to have sufficient information and guarantee access to environmental justice in our country, said Boy in a press release. Also in a press release, Zinc Nacional said it had been cooperating with officials from the federal agency and has also had visits from state health, labor, and environmental agencies, as well as local officials from San Nicolas de los Garza, the municipality where it is located. We have collaborated with all of them and we reiterate that we are fully willing to address any observations identified as part of this process, said the release. Some of these inspections have resulted in requests for action that are being addressed. As agreed after these visits, the material will be removed from operating yards and covered to minimize the environmental footprint of our activities. According to Profepa, Zinc Nacional told its inspectors that the contents of the thousands of sacks in that yard are the company's finished product, zinc oxide. Zinc Nacional imports electric arc furnace dust, also known as steel dust, from the U.S. A byproduct of steel recycling, it is hazardous waste and contains high levels of lead, cadmium, and arsenic. These are toxic metals that can cause health problems ranging from brain damage in children to cancer. At its Monterrey area plant, the company recycles the steel dust to obtain zinc. Bruce Lanfer, an international expert on the health effects of lead and a professor at Simon Fraser University, said that to understand any possible dangers posed by the plant, independent testing will be needed. Did officials test the 30,000 tons of improperly stored material? I hope so, he said. Did they conduct extensive sampling of soil and dust in nearby communities and measure it for heavy metals? Those steps are essential to assessing the risk to residents. On Friday, 2 federal legislators called on Mexico's Congress to press the country's environmental regulators for a deeper investigation of Zinc Nacional, questioning whether recent actions, which included the shutdown of the 15 pieces of equipment at the plant, are enough. News 5, Mexico breathed a sigh of relief this week when Donald Trump delayed his threatened tariffs by a month, apparently swerving away from an economic crisis at the last moment. But one aspect of the spat still rankles: the Trump administration's vague but shocking accusation of an intolerable alliance between Mexico's government and organized crime. The phrase marked a step change in U.S. discourse, and made every headline in Mexico. But experts say it misses the mark. Of course Mexico has a problem with corruption, said Carlos Perez Riquet, a political scientist in Mexico City. But the Mexican government is not an ally of organized crime. And those who say it is are lying, or simply do not know or understand Mexico. Organized crime could be seen as a ubiquitous but uneven parallel power, said Will Freeman, a fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Sometimes it works with the state, sometimes it fights it. Sometimes they just exist side by side, Freeman said. Corruption is most prevalent at a municipal level, which is both the least protected layer of the state and where criminal groups seek deals with authorities to deepen their control over the local territory and its businesses. This was on show during the 2024 elections, when more than 30 candidates were killed as criminal groups competed for influence. But corruption has gone higher up, too. Several state governors have been extradited to the U.S. for ties to organized crime, while the Trump administration cited the case of Genaro Garcia Luna, the former security chief who was recently sentenced to 38 years in U.S. prison for receiving bribes from the Sinaloa cartel. Then there were the allegations against Salvador Cienfuegos, the former defense minister who was arrested on drug trafficking charges at the Los Angeles airport, only to be released under pressure from the Mexican government. But such cases did not equate to an alliance, a term that tarred the whole of the government, said Cecilia Farfán-Méndez, a researcher at the University of California at San Diego. The way it's phrased implies that it's all done with the knowledge of the Mexican government, and almost willingly, said Farfán-Méndez. No one denies the existence of corruption in Mexico. But that's very different to saying, the government is an active participant. U.S. frustration may have stemmed from its perception that the Mexican government has more intelligence than it acts on. The army has such power in Mexico, said Freeman. I think they see and hear everything that's going on. But inaction may just reflect differing priorities. While the U.S. wants to go after top drug traffickers, Mexico primarily wants to reduce violence. And in practice, these objectives often run counter to one another, said Perez Riquet. Last year, Ismael El Mayo Zambada, who founded the Sinaloa cartel with Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, was detained along with one of Guzman's sons after a small plane arrived in the U.S. This started a war within the Sinaloa cartel that has killed or disappeared almost 2,000 people so far. The Mexican government was blindsided by the arrests, and blamed the U.S. for triggering the violence. U.S. authorities have denied their involvement, while celebrating the arrest of El Mayo. This is what happens when you have unilateral, uncoordinated actions, said Farfán-Méndez. What is happening in Sinaloa is not a desirable outcome. If the U.S. is frustrated by Mexico's lack of action on fentanyl, Mexico has every right to be frustrated, too, said Perez Riquet. The U.S. keeps selling guns that end up in Mexico. She added, there's frustration on all sides, but diplomacy is the way to resolve it. Trump and the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, both of whom took power within the space of a few months, inherited a bilateral security relationship in tatters. However, the political situation in Mexico could be ripe to rebuild it, if the Trump administration wants to take the opportunity, said Freeman. Sheinbaum has a rare level of political power, with sky-high approval ratings and her party, Morena, holding a two-thirds supermajority in Congress. Sheinbaum is also changing Mexico's security strategy, taking steps to confront organized crime and untangle its penetration of local government. You have the ingredients in Mexico now, and maybe not again, to actually do something about this, said Freeman. If the gloves-off toughness from Washington was coupled with some actual intelligence, this could be a really important turning point. He added, but ultimately I think Trump's theory of the region is just to harden the US-Mexico border, and who cares what happens to the south of that. News 6. International outrage in recent days has focused on Donald Trump's proposal that the U.S. take ownership of Gaza, and that more than 2 million Palestinians be displaced to allow the territory to be transformed from a demolition site into a Riviera in the Middle East. In Jordan and Egypt, the demand that both countries accept huge numbers of Palestinians from Gaza, potentially on a permanent basis, has prompted equal concern. Leaders of both countries immediately rejected the proposal, and the Jordanian king, Abdullah II, and the Egyptian president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, are heading to Washington in an attempt to convince Trump to change course. They are terrified that an Israeli policy of population transfer will actually become real, said Neil Quilliam, an associate fellow of the Middle East program at the Chatham House think tank in London. Abdullah and SISI know that they are vulnerable to Trump's trademark transactional style of geopolitics as their country's economies and security depend heavily on huge levels of U.S. aid and trade. Jordan accepted large numbers of displaced Palestinians in 1948 during the wars surrounding the foundation of Israel, and in 1967 when Israel occupied the West Bank and Gaza. A large proportion of Jordan's population, probably more than half, is of Palestinian origin, with many still classed as refugees. Katrina Sammer, an independent Amman-based analyst, said, "It would be a repeat trauma of an already traumatized people." The Nakba, the displacement of 1948, is still very fresh in the collective memory of the Arab people. The role, presence, and future of Palestinians in Jordan is one of the country's most politically sensitive issues. In 1970, armed factions of the Palestinian Liberation Organization came close to wresting control of the kingdom from the current king's father, Hussein. Though a repeat is highly unlikely, the events 55 years ago have not been forgotten. Jordanian officials have been warning of the consequences of displacement of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank since the beginning of the war, as violence there has increased and Israeli settlements have expanded. An effort to force Palestinians from the West Bank into Jordan, long an ambition of Israel's right wing, would be a red line regarded as a declaration of war by their militarily powerful neighbor, the officials have said. The Jordanians are very worried that what happens in Gaza could open the door to the annexation by Israel of the West Bank, Quilliam said. Authorities in Jordan have faced months of domestic protests calling for stronger measures in support of Palestinians, and any move to comply with Trump's demands would be seen as a betrayal of the Palestinian cause. But Jordan has a peace treaty with Israel and close military and economic ties with the U.S. It also receives massive and vital financial aid from Washington, giving Trump significant leverage. Officials in Amman privately refer to the balancing act required by the kingdom. The questions of who counts as Jordanian and what it means to be Jordanian are highly combustible, said Ali Ibrahimi, a regional expert at the Atlantic Council. So there's the demographic issue, but also the fact that Trump is drawing attention to King Abdullah's ties to Israel and his alliance with and dependence on the U.S. Both matters have the very real potential to destabilize the Jordanian monarchy. Another issue is practical. The Jordanian economy has suffered through the war and public services are stretched to breaking point. Security services have struggled to contain Islamist extremists, while support for more moderate Islamists has apparently surged. Sammer said, "A plan like this needs years of preparation. It could be a security nightmare, and Jordan would be seen as betraying the Palestinian cause." In Cairo, security is a major concern, especially in the highly sensitive zone of the Sinai Desert where some have suggested vast refugee camps could be built. Egypt has refused to allow Palestinians in Gaza to flee into its territory during the 16-month war there, fearing a massive and destabilizing influx that could become permanent. Coming up next, newspaper. It's time for your weather forecast, lads. Morning sun with Face, with all the details on what to expect across Australia today. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in a few seconds, right before the commercial break. Good morning, Australia Sun with Face, and welcome back to Weather Forecast Lads Morning. I'm Yanes Wandens 13, bringing you all the latest updates on today's weather across our beautiful country, as we kick off this great Tuesday, February 11, 2025. Let's start with Sydney, where the skies are looking crystal clear sunrise. The sun is shining bright, and temperatures are expected to reach a pleasant high of 28 degrees Celsius. It's a perfect day to enjoy the outdoors, whether you're heading to the beach or taking a stroll in the park beach with umbrella hash. So, sunscreen on and enjoy the sunshine. Moving to Melbourne, sun behind cloud hash, it's going to be a bit more overcast today, with some light clouds covering the sky. Temperatures will peak at 21 degrees Celsius, so it's a great day for a cozy jacket and a warm coffee teacup with handle. Not too hot, not too cold, just a perfect day for those who enjoy cooler temperatures. Now, let's head up to Brisbane, rain cloud hash. You might want to keep an umbrella handy as there will be light rain showers throughout the morning. Expect some wet weather with a high of 24 degrees Celsius. It's not all bad though. Bring your rain gear and enjoy the fresh, rainy atmosphere of Brisbane. Perfect for those who love the cool, refreshing rain cloud hash. Over in Perth, Palm Tree, things are heating up. If you're in Perth today, you can expect a hot day ahead, with temperatures soaring to 33 degrees Celsius. It's a beautiful, warm day to hit the beach and enjoy the outdoors. Make sure to stay hydrated and wear those sunnies to protect your eyes from the intense sunshine. Smiling face with sunglasses. Finally, let's take a quick look at Adelaide, sun with face, where it's going to be a warm, sunny day with temperatures reaching 26 degrees Celsius. Perfect for a day of outdoor activities like a walk along the River Torrens or a visit to the Adelaide Botanic Garden tree. Enjoy the sunshine, but make sure to stay cool and take breaks in the shade. So there you have it, Australia. Clear skies in Sydney, cloudy in Melbourne, rainy in Brisbane, hot in Perth, and sunny in Adelaide. Whether you're heading outside for some fun in the sun or grabbing your rain gear, we've got you covered. That's your weather forecast, lads, morning for today. Remember to stay safe, enjoy your day, and stay tuned for more updates as we continue with your morning. Have a wonderful Tuesday, and I'll be back with more news shortly.
Good morning, Australian, and welcome back to Australian Lads News Morning Sun with Face, right after your weather update. I'm your host, First Galaxy Australian 2K10, and we've got a lot to cover today. It's Tuesday, February 11th, 2025, and let's dive right into the top headlines. News 7: Ecuadorians are voting in a presidential election that has shaped up to be a repeat of the 2023 race, when they chose a young, conservative millionaire over the former leftist president's protégé. Luisa González and the incumbent, Daniel Noboa, are the clear frontrunners in the pool of 16 candidates. All have promised to reduce the widespread crime that pushed the country into an unnerving new normal 4 years ago. The rise in violence across the South American country is linked to the trafficking of cocaine produced in neighboring Colombia and Peru. Many voters have become victims of crime, so their personal and collective losses will be a determining factor in the outcome of the election. Voting is mandatory in Ecuador. In the port city of Guayaquil, people lined up under a light rain outside a public university where tens of thousands were expected to cast ballots. "For me, this president is disastrous," said Marta Bars, 35, who went to the voting center with her 3 teenage children. "Can he change things in 4 more years? No. He hasn't done anything." Bars, who must pay $25, £20, a month to a local gang to avoid harassment or worse, said she would vote for González because she believed she could reduce crime and improve the economy. More than 13.7 million people are eligible to vote. To win outright, a candidate needs 50% of the vote or at least 40% with a 10-point lead over the closest challenger. If needed, a runoff election would take place on the 13th of April. Noboa defeated González in the October 2023 runoff of a snap election that was triggered by the decision of the then-president, Guillermo Lasso, to dissolve the National Assembly and shorten his own mandate as a result. Noboa and González, a mentee of the former president Rafael Correa, had served only short stints as lawmakers before launching their 2023 presidential campaigns. Noboa, 37, is an heir to a fortune built on the banana trade. He founded an event organizing company when he was 18 and then joined his father's Noboa Corp., where he held management positions in the shipping, logistics, and commercial areas. His political career began in 2021, when he won a seat in the National Assembly and chaired its Economic Development Commission. Under his presidency, the homicide rate dropped from 46.18 per 100,000 people in 2023 to 38.76 per 100,000 people last year. It nevertheless remains far higher than the 6.85 per 100,000 people in 2019. Kayla Torres, an architecture student waiting for her turn to vote, said she had not yet decided who to vote for. None of the candidates, she said, would be able to lower crime across Ecuador because of deep-rooted government corruption. "If I could, I wouldn't be here," said Torres, who has witnessed 3 robberies in public buses over the past 4 years and barely escaped a carjacking in December. Things are not going to change. Torres added that criminal activity had affected her studies as her neighborhood's gang targeted anyone walking the streets after 10 p.m., which forced her to skip night classes to not miss curfew. She said her family was not forced to pay monthly extortion fees to the gang, but the group had urged neighbors to vote for a specific candidate. "In my area, they left flyers in every house door saying that if they didn't vote for Luisa, they would have to face the consequences," Torres said. González, 47, held various government jobs during the presidency of Correa, who led Ecuador from 2007 to 2017 with free-spending socially conservative policies and grew increasingly authoritarian in his last years as president. He was sentenced to prison in absentia in 2020 in a corruption scandal. González was a lawmaker from 2021 until May 2023, when Lasso dissolved the National Assembly. She was unknown to most voters until Correa's party picked her as its presidential candidate for the snap election. News 8, Donald Trump halted a key part of his tariff attack on China on Friday, as he threatened to impose new U.S. duties on goods from many more countries next week. Plans to ensure shipments from China to the U.S. worth less than $800 still face tariffs. Removing the long-standing duty-free status of low-cost packages have been delayed to give more time to federal agencies to prepare for the change. At the White House on Friday, however, the president said he would announce new reciprocal tariffs on more countries next week. He did not give any details specifying what the tariffs will be and which countries would be affected. "I'll be announcing that next week reciprocal trade, so that we're treated evenly with other countries. We don't want any more, any less," Trump told reporters during a bilateral meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. On Tuesday, the U.S. Postal Service briefly halted all incoming packages from China and Hong Kong after Trump ended a de minimis provision that allowed low-value packages from China to enter the U.S. duty-free. Any new tariffs will add to the confusion and chaos over global trade Trump has created since he entered office. Trump had originally planned to place 25% tariffs against Mexico and Canada on the 1st of February but ultimately halted both tariffs after negotiations with the country leaders. Those tariffs are now expected to go into effect the 1st of March. Reuters contributed reporting. News 9, thunderstorms across New South Wales and eastern Victoria on Monday brought flash flooding, destructive winds and hail, as the Bureau of Meteorology warned severe conditions would continue. A major storm rolled across the Sydney CBD about midday, bringing dark skies and heavy rainfall. By mid-afternoon, the city had recorded 52.8 millimeters of rain at Observatory Hill since 9 a.m., according to the BOM. Horsley Park, 50 kilometers west of the city, had recorded 88 millimeters. Between noon and 2 p.m., the State Emergency Service had rescued 21 people from vehicles caught in flash flooding in the Sydney metropolitan area, a spokesperson said. It's a reminder that flash flooding can occur quickly and without warning, and if people do come across a flooded road, they should stop, turn around and find an alternate route. Since midnight, the SES had responded to more than 500 calls for assistance due to trees down, roof damage, and requests for sandbags, particularly in the southern and central western parts of NSW and metropolitan Sydney. Late Monday morning, the SES warned residents of a number of Sydney suburbs to stay indoors due to heavy rainfall. By about 1:30 p.m., the warning had been downgraded, but residents were advised to drive slowly and to stay clear of fallen trees, power lines and any damaged buildings. For people driving home this afternoon during peak hour traffic due at about 5 p.m., they should really heed the warnings through emergency services, and if they do come across a flooded road, just don't take the risk, the SES spokesperson said. The senior meteorologist Jonathan Howe had said earlier there was potential for damaging to destructive winds and giant hail throughout the day. We have seen some high rainfall totals starting to build with those storms pushing through, he said, with plenty more showers to come. Severe thunderstorms brought 2 to 6 centimeters hail in Borowa, Hardin, and Temora. The risk is not over yet, the senior meteorologist Miriam Bradbury warned early on Monday afternoon. Areas to the west of the NSW ranges were due to high-end severe thunderstorms on Monday. These very dangerous systems were predicted to bring destructive wind gusts of up to 125 km per hour. Just after 4 p.m. on Monday, the Bureau issued a severe thunderstorm warning for heavy rainfall, large hailstones and damaging winds over the NSW northern interior, including parts of the northwest and central west slopes and plains, Riverina, upper and lower western districts. Storms sweep NSW and Victoria with 21 people rescued from vehicles in Sydney flash floods. SES responds to more than 500 calls for assistance in NSW and warns drivers to take care after heavy rain. Follow our Australian News Live blog for latest updates. Get our breaking news email, free app or daily news podcast. Supported by The Guardian Civic Journalism Trust. About this content. Petra stock. Monday the 10th of February 2025 5.50 GMT. Share. Thunderstorms across New South Wales and eastern Victoria on Monday brought flash flooding, destructive winds and hail, as the Bureau of Meteorology warned severe conditions would continue. A major storm rolled across the Sydney CBD about midday, bringing dark skies and heavy rainfall. By mid-afternoon, the city had recorded 52.8 millimeters of rain at Observatory Hill since 9 a.m., according to the BOM. Horsley Park, 50 kilometers west of the city, had recorded 88 millimeters. Between noon and 2 p.m., the State Emergency Service had rescued 21 people from vehicles caught in flash flooding in the Sydney metropolitan area, a spokesperson said. Flooding at Town Hall Station in Sydney. View image in full screen. Flooding at Town Hall Station in Sydney. It's a reminder that flash flooding can occur quickly and without warning, and if people do come across a flooded road, they should stop, turn around and find an alternate route. Since midnight, the SES had responded to more than 500 calls for assistance due to trees down, roof damage, and requests for sandbags, particularly in the southern and central western parts of NSW and metropolitan Sydney. Storm brings hail to Hardin in NSW, video. Late Monday morning, the SES warned residents of a number of Sydney suburbs to stay indoors due to heavy rainfall. By about 1:30 p.m., the warning had been downgraded, but residents were advised to drive slowly and to stay clear of fallen trees, power lines and any damaged buildings. For people driving home this afternoon during peak hour traffic due at about 5 p.m., they should really heed the warnings through emergency services, and if they do come across a flooded road, just don't take the risk, the SES spokesperson said. Sign up for Guardian Australia's breaking news email. The senior meteorologist Jonathan Howe had said earlier there was potential for damaging to destructive winds and giant hail throughout the day. We have seen some high rainfall totals starting to build with those storms pushing through, he said, with plenty more showers to come. Hail in Harden, NSW, on Monday. View image in full screen. Hail in Harden, NSW. Photograph, Michelle Gallo. Severe thunderstorms brought 2 to 6 centimeters hail in Borowa, Harden and Temora. The risk is not over yet, the senior meteorologist Miriam Bradbury warned early on Monday afternoon. Areas to the west of the NSW ranges were due to high-end severe thunderstorms on Monday. These very dangerous systems were predicted to bring destructive wind gusts of up to 125 km per hour. Flooding in Balgolar Road, Manly. View image in full screen. Flooding in Balgolar Road, Manly. Photograph, NSW says Manly unit. Flooding on Anzac Bridge, Sydney. View image in full screen. Flooding on Anzac Bridge, Sydney. Photograph, Josh Redfern, Sydney Weather Nerds. Just after 4 p.m. on Monday, the Bureau issued a severe thunderstorm warning for heavy rainfall, large hailstones and damaging winds over the NSW northern interior, including parts of the northwest and central west slopes and plains, Riverina, upper and lower western districts. Skip past newsletter promotion. Sign up to Breaking News Australia. Free newsletter. Get the most important news as it breaks. Enter your email address. Sign up. Privacy notice: newsletters may contain info about charities, online ads, and content funded by outside parties. For more information, see our privacy policy. We use Google reCAPTCHA to protect our website, and a Google privacy policy and terms of service apply. After newsletter promotion. The driving factor of this wet, stormy weather is a low-pressure trough lying through NSW, Bradbury said. That trough is helping to draw in moisture from the north and off the ocean, feeding it into any showers, storms and rain areas that develop. It's fairly stagnant, it's not moving anywhere very quickly. Severe storms were likely to continue on Tuesday, but in Victoria conditions would start clearing from the afternoon, she said. In Victoria, the State Emergency Service had received more than 680 requests for assistance since Saturday morning. In the 24 hours to 9 a.m. on Monday, rainfall totals reached 89 mm in Murrumbara, north of Gundagai. Coonabarabran recorded 61 mm overnight, while 43 mm of rain was observed at Gunnedah, and 54 mm at Mount Palmer, in the Hunter. News 10, Kosovo's ruling Viti Vendost party was on track to win the country's parliamentary election, but will need to negotiate a coalition with other parties to form a government, exit polls and preliminary results showed. With 73% of the votes counted, Prime Minister Albin Kurti's leftist Self-Determination Movement Party, or Viti Vendost, had won 41.99%. The election result would be a drop from the more than 50% that it won in 2021. But it puts Kurti in position to lead the next government in a country whose politics are dominated by the relationship with neighboring Serbia and Serbs within its borders. During the election campaign, Kurti apparently ruled out forming a coalition, saying he would not participate in government unless he won an outright majority. But, late on Sunday, after proclaiming victory, Kurti said he would form the new government without hinting who could be a potential coalition partner. "We are the first party, the winning party that will create the next government," Kurti told reporters. "We will continue to finish the work that we have started." Kurti's party called supporters to go out in the streets to celebrate. Kosovo's election commission said it was not able to publish the full results on Sunday because its software was down, and they will collect data manually and publish early hours on Monday. "We apologize to all Kosovo citizens," head of Election Commission Krešnik Radeniki said. The opposition Democratic League of Kosovo, LDK, conceded Vitivendo's victory. Its leader Lumir Abdiksiku said that according to LDK's own vote count, Vitivendo's had come first with 39.08% of the votes. The opposition Democratic Party of Kosovo came second with 21.84% of the votes, while his party came third with 18.14% of the votes. 3 exit polls gave Kurti between 37% and 40.04% of the votes. Kurti, an Albanian nationalist, came to power in 2021 when a coalition run by the Vitivendo's party received more than 50% of votes and secured a 7-seat majority in the 120-seat parliament. Kosovo, Europe's newest country, gained independence from Serbia in 2008 with backing from the United States after a 78-day NATO bombing campaign against Serbian forces in 1999. Political analysts say Kurti's popularity has been bolstered by moves to extend government control in Kosovo's ethnic Serb-majority north. But critics say he has failed to deliver on education and health services, and that his policies have distanced Kosovo from its traditional allies, the European Union and the United States. The EU placed economic curbs on the country in 2023 for its role in stoking tensions with ethnic Serbs, cutting at least €150 million, $155 million, in funding, Reuters has found. The centre-right LDK campaigned on restoring relations with the United States and the EU, and joining NATO. Kurti's government has had some wins. Unemployment has shrunk from 30% to about 10%, the minimum wage is up, and last year the economy grew faster than the Western Balkans average. The election campaign has been acrimonious. The Elections Complaints and Appeals Panel, which monitors party and candidates' complaints, has issued more than €650,000 in fines to parties this election season, 3 times the 2021 tally, data from NGO Democracy in Action shows. News 11, a man has been arrested after 3 people were injured in a suspected knife attack that has left a Dublin neighbourhood in a state of shock. Irish police said they were responding to a serious incident after about 3 p.m. on Sunday. 3 men, aged between their mid-20s and mid-40s, were injured in what was described as an awful random attack across several streets in the Arbor Hill area of Stoneybatter. There was a large Garda presence in the area and other emergency services attended. The local Fine Gael councillor Ray McAdam said residents had been told to stay inside and lock their doors. He said police had reacted very quickly and swarmed the place. Garda said a man in his 20s was intercepted and detained close to the scene by an unarmed officer at a Garda station in the north of Dublin. Police said 3 men assaulted in the course of the incident were taken to hospital for treatment. 2 had serious but not life-threatening injuries, while the others' injuries were described as less serious. After the arrest, a spokesperson for the Garda Síochána, the Irish National Police Force, said, "There is no ongoing risk to the public at this time." The Taoiseach, Michael Martin, wished those injured in the shocking attacks in Dublin a full recovery. In a statement on X, he said, "Our thoughts are with the victims of the shocking attacks in Stoneybatter earlier today. I want to pay tribute to the Gardaí and emergency services for their prompt response. I wish all those injured a full recovery and urge anyone with any information to contact Garda." A heightened police presence and a number of crime scene cordons were in place until shortly before 5 p.m. All traffic restrictions had been lifted by the evening. Police are appealing for any witnesses to the incident to come forward. Anyone who was in the Stoneybatter area between 2:30 p.m. and 3:30 p.m., who may have any video footage linked to this incident, is asked to make this footage available to Gardaí, the spokesperson said. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Bridewell Garda station on 01-6668200, the Garda confidential line on 1800-666-111, or any Garda station. McAdam said community officers were contacting local residents to assure them they would maintain a presence in the area. He described the neighborhood as closely knit. There's a level of shock, a level of concern, but the overriding sense here in Stoneybatter is one of hope that those who have been impacted and injured will make a swift recovery, he said. There's a sense of, how could something like this happen in our neighborhood? Local people had been reassured by the quick Garda response, he said. The Sinn Féin leader, Mary Lou MacDonald, described the incident as terrible news. My thoughts are with those injured and their families. The community is in a state of shock, she said in a statement. The Gardaí and emergency services are to be commended for their response. News 12, Ed Sheeran was stopped by police from busking in India after he was told he lacked permissions. The songwriter was seen singing the hit single Shape of You and playing his guitar on a pavement in the southern city of Bengaluru before his concert on Sunday night. In a video from local channels that has since gone viral, a police officer walks up to Sheeran while he is singing with the crowd and unplugs the microphone, as onlookers jeer. A dismayed Sheeran leaves soon after. Police said event organizers had been refused permission for the street performance, which was on Church Street, one of the busiest areas in one of India's largest cities. I refused to give permission because Church Street gets very crowded. That is the reason he was asked to vacate the place, Bengaluru police official Shekhar T. Tekkananavar told news agency ANI. Sheeran, who began his career as a busker in the UK and is known for performing in unexpected places, insisted later on his Instagram account that he did have permission to perform. We had permission to busk, by the way. Hence, us playing in that exact spot was planned out beforehand. It wasn't just us randomly turning up. All good though, he wrote. Sheeran is in India for a 15-day leg of his The Mathematics Tour, and performed in front of thousands of people at an open ground in Bengaluru later that night, accompanied by Indian singer Shilpa Io. Sheeran surprised fans by singing 2 hit local songs in the local Telugu language with Io on stage. Fans shared their disappointment at the police decision on social media, however. PC Mohan, a local MP from the ruling BJP party, posted on X that the impromptu gig had taken on a sour note when police arrived, adding that even global stars must follow local rules, no permit, no performance. India is increasingly on the touring map for the world's biggest stars, with demand for live music increasing as disposable incomes grow in the country. Sheeran's biggest ever tour of the country follows closely behind Dua Lipa's recent performance in Mumbai and Coldplay's multi-city tour. Last year, Sheeran launched his own PA system designed for buskers. The Sheeran Busker provides pristine audio and convenient portability for on-the-go performers across all genres, skill levels, and professional pedigrees, according to the website for his Sheeran Looper band. It has 20 hours of Azerbaijan is escalating its rare standoff with the Kremlin as the fallout from the downing of an Azerbaijani passenger jet continues, highlighting Russia's diminishing influence across the former Soviet Union. 38 people were killed when an Azerbaijan Airlines plane crashed on the 25th of December near the city of Aktau in Kazakhstan after rerouting across the Caspian Sea from southern Russia. After the incident, Azerbaijan's authoritarian president, Ilham Aliyev, accused Russia of accidentally shooting down the plane with its air defense and criticized Moscow for trying to hush up the issue for days, which he said caused surprise, regret, and rightful indignation in Baku. Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, soon issued a rare apology for the tragic incident, but stopped short of admitting Russia was responsible. In the week since, Moscow has struggled to diffuse tensions with the oil-rich nation on its southern border. On Wednesday, the APA news agency, which has ties to the Azerbaijani government, reported that Baku was preparing to appeal to an international court over Russia's alleged downing of the plane. Facts and evidence are being collected, and preparations are underway to appeal to an international court, APA wrote in an article laced with scathing accusations of Moscow's attempts to evade responsibility. The identity of those who gave the order to fire and those who opened fire is known to the Azerbaijani side. The Russian side intends to create a Malaysia Boeing 2 situation, the article continued, referencing Russia's efforts to deny responsibility for the 2014 downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17, which investigators concluded was shot down over eastern Ukraine by pro-Russian militias. And that wraps up today's edition of Australian Lads News Morning Sunrise. We hope you enjoyed the broadcast and are ready to take on the day with all the updates and insights you need. We'll be back tomorrow morning, Wednesday, February 12, 2025. with more stories and more fun. Thank you for watching, and a good morning everyone.